For more on these issues and how they tie into the upcoming election, I want to bring on former Green Beret Andrew Knaggs, a Republican congressional candidate running for Virginia's 7th District. So, Andrew, when we look at the first story from over the weekend, a big part of it was this whole idea of a possible Russian bounty that was on U.S. soldiers overseas in the Middle East. Does this seem like something that Russia would do and the type of intelligence that would have to be vetted before it made its way to the president's desk in order for him to be briefed?
Well, first of all, Alex, thanks for having me on. Absolutely, it seems like something that would be in bounds for the Russians. But I will tell you, though, that it's absolutely disgraceful that Nancy Pelosi and the other Democrats in the New York Times would imply that national security professionals around the president would not brief him on this. I can tell you from my time working for the president as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Combating Terrorism, that there's no one in the establishment that I ever worked with or had the pleasure of serving with that would not tell him about a situation like this. So if the Russians did in fact engage in this behavior, then we need to start treating them as a state sponsor of terrorism. But I can tell you that I take President Trump at his word that he was not briefed on it.
Yeah, I understand politics, but when it comes to the matter of U.S. soldiers being killed abroad, that is something that I think every American can come together on and say that we need to condemn that in its upright, how terrible it would be. But I think it's also something that we do need to approach with a degree of caution, making sure that the information is correct and making sure that all the information that is getting out there is also correct before we take some very drastic measures. And speaking of those type of measures, turning our attention more domestically, we saw the Justice Department over the weekend also bringing some charges against individuals who are being accused of vandalism at different parts throughout the country, specifically when it comes to statues or other storefronts, things like that. Do you think that from a political standpoint, apart from just a legal standpoint, that this is what the Justice Department had to do in order to kind of calm some of the situations taking place across the country?
Well, I think it's absolutely appropriate. I support Attorney General Barr in taking this step. But I think the American people know, and certainly the people in the 7th District of Virginia, where I'm running for Congress, we understand that we cannot return to normalcy until there's order brought back to our streets. And this next election is about law and order. But that said, I think that this initiating this task force, establishing this step towards returning law and order, it's absolutely necessary, and it's the right thing for the country.
And I do want to talk about your election, too, because it's an interesting one. Of course, you're running for the GOP nomination in order to go up against Abigail Spanberger in Virginia's 7th District. Sure. And she is a former CIA agent herself. She is very much in line with the intelligence community that takes place, as many people are. I mean, it is a different district than, for example, one that's outside of Los Angeles or Chicago, something like that. So when you're running right now, what are some of the major issues that you're hearing about that your constituents want to see solved?
Well, the first one is the economy and jobs. People care about how they're going to put food on the table. They want some certainty. And what I'm hearing is that there's tremendous uncertainty about how Democrats would deal with the economy if they were in charge. So that's number one. The second thing is national security. We already talked about Russia, but China looms large in everybody's view right now. So people are concerned about holding China responsible for what has happened this year involving the virus, but also in terms of the cheating and the things that they've done with respect to manufacturing and cornering the market and undercutting the market in areas like pharmaceuticals. And then the final thing is immigration. People care about immigration, and they think that the way that the system has been managed for many years is broken and that it's unfair. And people want limited, legal, and diverse and merit-based immigration. And I believe that that's what the Republican Party stands for. We have limiting principles that we're pursuing, and I personally believe that we need stronger conservative leadership in Congress, and that is what the people in the 7th District are looking for. And in particular, the people of the 7th District of Virginia are concerned about sending people to Congress that couldn't stand up to our governor here in the Commonwealth, and they want people who have the courage to stand up against Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democratic machine, and that's what I bring to the table.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, even before the coronavirus pandemic hit the shores of the U.S., people wanted accountability against China for its economic practices. That's why the Trump administration ran on new trade deals going into 2016. That's why they're following through on that to some degree with the tariffs. Of course, that's been a little bit complicated because of coronavirus, but that's only exacerbated calls for people wanting accountability from China. And I think you're spot on to say what you're talking about from Republican leadership as well. I mean, I've seen several conservatives say over the past couple of weeks that conservative leadership has basically been absent from the conversations that we're having, whether it's about the unrest taking place in some of the cities. No matter what the issue is, they've been very silent as of recently. So I think you're right on to say that. Andrew Knaggs, if any of our viewers want more information, we've been flashing his website, andrewnaggs.com. Andrew, it's always a pleasure having you on. Thanks for being with us tonight.